Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Welcome everyone. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, language. Deutsch? Ja, also ansonsten alle sprechen Deutsch. Oh. So, maybe English. Oh, well, there are some quotes from Prabhupada, so maybe English is better, more original in this context. And Srimati Govinda Dasi, oh, I was a bit disappointed. I said, well, this is Germany, and I always encourage actually to, the local language. But the world has become so international, and so maybe one day we all will be speaking in Russian or Ukrainian or Croatian, whatever. It has become very international. So better English. It's not the best of languages. Even the English scholars, they will confirm that. So anyway, first we have Sanskrit anyhow. So that's Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text 17. Very popular, or very well-known verse. I read the shloka first and the translation, and then we go line by line, and after that, word by word. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna, punya shravana kirtana, hridyanta stoho hi abadrani, vidonoti surit satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Param Atma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So now we go line by line with repeat. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna, punya shravana kirtana, hridyantastohi avadrani, vidonoti surit satam. Again one time, and if anyone wants to repeat the full, it's fine. I repeat one time, and if anyone wants, fine. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna, punya shravana kirtana, hridyantastohi abhadrani, idonoti surit satam. You can also take the book if you want to. Shrinvatam, those who have developed the urge to hear the message of. Develop? Of. Oh, that's a bit long. Svakata, his own words. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Punya, virtues. Shravana, hearing. Kirtana, chanting. Hridyanta sta, within one's heart. He, certainly, abhadrani, desire to enjoy matter. Vidonoti, cleanses. Surit, benefactor. Satam, of the truthful. So again, let me read. Translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from Him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Shikshastaka, declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that He has endowed His innumerable names with the same potency. There are no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that He can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound. But unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's names and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to His devotee. When He sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord and has thus become eager to hear about Him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to Him. That we find in those 4 slokas in Bhagavad Gita. They're also called the root slokas, chapter 10, verse 8, 9, 10, and 11. And in those 10 and 11, Krishna describes, Prabhupada is referring to this here, without mentioning the shloka. Oh, Krishna says how He sits in everyone's heart, and out of compassion, with the torchlight of knowledge, He burns away the ignorance in the heart of the devotee. So we can trust that. So Prabhupada is referring to that here. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into His kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps, and in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are produced of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord Himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in this contact, in the contact of women and wealth, is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial. And it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. So, well, Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshunamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in general, I always find that the first canto is, in many ways, it's complete in itself in God realization. Every word, every shloka is so full, and especially in the beginning, already so much divya gyan, divine knowledge, is established. So this is important for us. Also the next one, we are chanting many times, the next one is Nasta Prayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. But that's for another time. But these are very important slokas, so the essence is to develop not only the taste, but to develop that urge to, yes, I want to hear something about Krishna, I want to hear Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. I can't wait to read Krishna book tonight or listen to Krishna book tonight. So that we don't necessarily have that urge yet or that taste. It's nothing really to worry about, because we are supported by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, who says in his Shikshastaka, unfortunately, I have no attraction for them, referring to the names with all the power of Krishna himself in those names, and we don't even have any strict rules where to chant, how to chant. So Krishna made it so easy. Still we have those difficulties. One devotee friend of mine in Amsterdam, Ananda Swarup Prabhu, he says frankly, we are so attached to so many, nonsense things. If we would be taken back to Godhead now, we would spit, bite, scratch, just to avoid it, because we don't have that, we are so covered. As described here, like towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, practically since time immemorial. And used to be very big discussion among devotees, how did we fall down, when did we fall down, and all these things. And some devotees even became, almost like enemies, because they had a different opinion on that. The fact of the matter is, we should follow Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada so many times says, in Bhagavad Gita says, you cannot trace that fall down. And there's no historical incident like that in the sense of material time and space. I think I mentioned that before, the day before yesterday. And in Jaiva Dharma, right in the first chapter, it says something like, in my own words now, since the fall of the jiva takes place from a different dimension, where our time and space do not apply, our mind and intelligence will never understand that anyhow. So why get into all this discussion? It can only be revealed in the heart. And when we reach this point, one fine day, then it will be so obvious to us, because we are not going some new space. I mentioned that before. We will be going home, and like we are so covered, millions and millions and millions of years, so many, I mentioned it many times. It's just like the example is given. We have been away from our home in the material world, for many years. Now when we drive back or walk back, slowly, oh, that tree I remember, this and this. And step by step, we will start recognizing. So that's material world, there may be a little bit enjoyment, you meet some neighbors, oh, this happened, that happened, oh, the apple tree is so big now, blah, blah, blah. So there's no rasa, no juice in that. But can you imagine, I can't right now, when you actually go back home to Godhead and you walking back, or you're being taken back by Krishna, Vishnu tutors, whatever. You are being taken back to your real existence, your home, the spiritual home, full of bliss, full of knowledge, and eternal. It's, well, inconceivable, but one day we will experience this again. And the fact is, sometimes in our devotional service, I don't know any devotee who never had a moment of real ecstasy. Sometimes devotees think ecstasy is boom, 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 louder, 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 more ecstasy. I think it doesn't work like that, but whether you're pujari, whether you're working in the kitchen, whether cleaning, book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, in one way, it is a sacrifice many times, austerity. And it's fine like that. And these sparks, or little glimpses of ecstasy, come when we execute this devotional service. And then we get a small taste, and we want more. And then we understand that austerity is actually not austerity. It's just a means of getting out of this miserable world of birth and death. This is the real suffering. After all, austerity, the first two syllables Lord Brahma heard when he was bewildered, what is all this? He heard two syllables, and it wasn't enjoy, it was tapa, austerity, which while we are attached to sense gratification, I want this and this, tapasya always sounds horrible. But once we practice it, tapasya itself becomes a pleasure actually, because we are removing ourselves from this material entanglement step by step. But when these glimpses of ecstasy, even at the beginning, come, then we become very sure. And it's always, never to forget, it's always with the help of the spiritual master and Sri Krishna himself. Krishna from within the heart. Because basically, for anyone but a surrendered devotee, this material world cannot be overcome. What is the sloka? Devi Yesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapatyante Maya Etam Tarantite. It's this divine energy of mine. I mean, the material energy is also divine. This material energy of mine is practically impossible, very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it. And there are these examples. The big material ocean becomes as small as the hoof print of a calf, and you can easily walk over it. But the attraction is very strong. Prabhupada mentioned, does he mention wine and women? Funny. Money, I think, money. And of course, when we say women, it also goes the other way around, of course. That, in this world, it's natural, especially the boys are attracted to the girls are attracted to the boys, totally natural, and it can become very, very difficult to overcome. So it all depends on our surrender, or degree of surrender. That's all we have to really do. And the main important point is, again, so many places in Shastra, we always hear Shravanam Kirtanam. These are basically the most essential These are the most essential methods of devotional service. So from this, because I promised, there was a request to speak a little bit more about my memories of Srila Prabhupada, and Akila, who's not here yet, he requested something about the German Yatra in the early 1970s, especially 73, 74. So I like to keep it related to Srila Prabhupada as much as possible. So I will briefly describe from my point of view, or my view on my memory, how it was when Srila Prabhupada came to Germany, to the Schloss Rettershof, castle in the Taunus Hills near Königstein, or not very far from Frankfurt. So I try to make a little brief, because this is my last talk here, and there's something about India I want to mention, and something about France, and I skipped Sweden for now altogether. Did I speak at all about memories, about how I joined in? No, not here. Yeah. Well, that can be separate. I mean, first time meeting with your spiritual master, very, very special. So I can maybe tonight or tomorrow during the day. Anyhow, so there was a big, big reception at the airport. We had rented the VIP lounge for the food bathing ceremony and everything. Evidently, Srila Prabhupada was very pleased. Also, you have seen this picture of, I mean, Hansajuta Prabhu, whatever happened to him later, you know, Prabhupada loved him very much, and you probably have seen these pictures. While you may not locate it, that's Frankfurt Airport, but Hansajuta with his shoulder back, and Srila Prabhupada looking back a little bit, they're looking at each other, and if you see those eyes of Srila Prabhupada, and Hansajuta is really like father and son, very deep. So Srila Prabhupada was very pleased. I mean, we went there, it was very festive. We went with one rented Mercedes car. Achetya Prabhu, he drove Srila Prabhupada. And we had 6, 7, 8 vans. I can't even remember whether this was still the Volkswagen vans or the Mercedes, which is really, doesn't matter at all. But they had flags from the windows and like that. So Prabhupada, when we arrived, he said to us, "You got a nice army here." So, because we were driving, how do you say in English, colonne in a row, headlights on, you know, in the middle of the summer, but not honking like a wedding or something. No. So, what really struck me, the first sentence Srila Prabhupada said, after he settled into the room, full packed room as always, and people standing, you know, in the door and behind the door. And the first thing Srila Prabhupada was a question actually. He said, "Where is Shivananda?" So immediately he was very concerned, because Shivananda was a devotee who, I think from Canada or from the US, was the first Hare Krishna devotee who was trying to establish something in Europe. No, in Germany. In England, we had already Guru Das, and Malati, Shyamsundar, and Jamuna, of course. Janaki first came, but I think the wife of Mukunda. So, and there was already one devotee, Kula Shekhar, the first European devotee. And so Shivananda went to Germany. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased with him, because he didn't even know the language, German. He just tried, and he was successful in establishing something. So anyhow, Srila Prabhupada of course, he never forgets any devotee, any service rendered by a devotee, disciple. So he comes after many years, after almost 5 years had passed, since Shivananda had gone to Germany, no, even 68 I think he went. So 7 years had passed, and Prabhupada immediately asked, where's Shivananda? So fortunately, Shivananda was in the room, so he humbly lifted his hand, and big smile from Srila Prabhupada. So, in brief, it was a very festive, and the castle, the Schloss Rettershof, was totally new. We got it last minute, and the endeavor to get such a big place, and Srila Prabhupada's visit, it wasn't combined. We were trying to get this place anyway, and then Srila Prabhupada confirmed he's coming. He was supposed to come to Cologne, where I was I was temple president, but I was also a new bhakta at the same time. At that time, to become a temple president, you're president now, it wasn't such a, there were not so many devotees. Well, I was not a new bhakta, but and I was a little, not scared, but I think it's over my head. My spiritual master coming now to the Cologne Yatra. Azura and Prito, they decided that because the building I rented it looked newer and more comfortable than the other buildings we had. But then it happened that the contract was signed on that castle near Frankfurt. So then, of course, a big renovation took place, and the typical thing, when Srila Prabhupada came through the front door, one devotee with a paint bucket and brush would leave through the back door. It was always like last minute, last touches like that. So I mentioned this before, Hansajuda was very, especially there, he kept control over, he was always very eager that disciples can meet their spiritual master personally. He wasn't shielding, just the opposite. So he kept lists, so each and every devotee had a chance to either be at least in one morning walk, one room darshan, a lecture every one of us could attend. So it was a very dynamic event. And of course, maybe you have read in this book by Vedavyas, Hansajuda being Hansajuda, he had these ideas. He printed the advertising poster for Srila Prabhupada coming. You heard it, so when you saw it from a distance, it read, Der Führer kommt. So there was a picture of Prabhupada. So that's exactly, of course, if you took a close look, it said in big letters, Der Führer of the Hare Krishna movement, der Hare Krishna Bewegung is coming, and then a picture of Prabhupada in between. So especially Vedavyas, he tried to convince Hansajuda, no, don't do that, and can't do that in Germany, because Führer means always Hitler, and it's still related to that. And but Hansajuda wouldn't budge. He said, no, the Germans, they like this stuff, and and Srila Prabhupada, by the way, he passed that, he asked some question, but he thought it's perfectly okay. Maybe, of course, he didn't know how this word, anyhow, but it had some initial repercussion. I mean, Prito Prabhu, it's really, Prito had this gift to contact people from all walks of life. So, I mean, that's to his eternal credit that, I said it also before, it's to his eternal that he brought these quality guests arranged. And you have seen those pictures, maybe that old gentleman sitting next to Prabhupada in the room, that's Karl Fried von Dürkheim, philosopher, Zen philosopher, and it was a Prabhupada had him sit right next to him, and they were, they exchanged birth dates, and oh, we are like brothers, and it was very, very sweet. And also very good intelligence, the questions they asked, and the other one was the Pater Emmanuel, in the black monk dress. He was the abbot of one. He passed away recently. He was the abbot of a monastery somewhere here in Bavaria, I think. And there was others, I forgot. Prito knows all the details. So, but this Karlfried von Dürkheim, this Zen philosopher, Prito picked him up at the Frankfurt railway station. And when they drove towards the Schloss Rettershof, I think it was Fischbach, Kelp, all these posters came up on the trees, on the lampposts, der Führer kommt. So that gentleman said, stop, please take me back to the station. I don't want to go to a place like this. He thought these are either Nazis or not very sincere people. So Prito stopped, and Prito convinced him slowly that this is an idea of one, GBC, who also has certain ideas, and convinced him. And then, of course, when he met Srila Prabhupada, everything was forgotten, and like that. So, other than that, it usually was, just because Srila Prabhupada was present, doesn't mean we would all hang around his room, and no, everyone would do his service, including book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, even more, well, not more than ever, because even little less, because we were supposed to come back for the evening class, of course, if there was a class or darshan like that. But we all did our service, and my service at that time was, well, BBT, but for the Prabhupada's stay, my service was to coordinate these Sankirtan groups. And there were the German Sankirtan groups, of course, so they always had to be rearranged because some small quarrel or this or that. And I can work with that Sankirtan leader, and always something. But there were so many devotees from England, France, and they had to be coordinated. They didn't speak German. They had to be given a mantra, what to say on Sankirtan, and mix them all together. And so that was quite a service. And then I think I did my BBT, and then there was darshan. Anyway, it's a beautiful memory for me. Also, it was not many parents came. My parents came from Hamburg. They got a room. They were quite surprised about this big Schloss, and I was very happy. And so were my parents. That my father, who was still a little bit reluctant, opposed, he said after having Prabhupada had one day darshan, just for, friends of Krishna, parents, and there was a very well-known doctor, a lady, you see her on these morning walks with a red dress. I forgot her name, doctor. She was very favorable. And so after that darshan for some guests who were close to the movement, my father said, now I know what holy man, what it means. So he was totally, convinced that much. And he later went to Vrindavan also, and like that. So it was very nice to see that. And, there are so many things happened. There was this. You might have heard, all heard of the police raid, the big raid in also 74, December 74. Big article in the Spiegel magazine. Like when I was running, I digress. When I was running in situations while I was working as a freelance photographer here in Germany and graphic designer in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like I mentioned before, people notice, neck beats and, there's something, mantra, and this man has something. And so they ask questions and everything. And So one of my, associates in the graphic design business, so I heard you have another name, something like spiritual name. I said, yes. What is it? I said, Atmavidya. Spelling? And then the other second, he goes to his Mac PowerBook, Googles Atmavidya Das, and boom, Spiegel article. Spiegel is a big magazine. And Atmavidya court case in Frankfurt, which was 3 years later. Not 2 years later, something like that. Atmavidya Das, one of the main accused, alias Axel Stocker, who smuggled 100,000 Deutschmarks in the harmonium from London, blah, 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 which wasn't actually true. And there was something similar, but it wasn't actually true. And then it said, president of the Hare Krishna temple in Cologne. So that person, he still calls me, hey, president. He calls me the president. He thought it so funny. Moses, it's funny, and the other people are, why do you call him president? And then he tells the story. So I guess it's Krishna's trick. They want to know something, and then other people want to know, and then you're more or less, if you like or not, you're forced to preach to these people or let them know what is this all about. And they already know you as a person, they know you're not crazy, they know you're sane, and so they listen. Must be something in it if he is into that. So that's, how did I get that? There was a lot of things going on. So you heard about this police raid, but before all that happened, there were many things which led to that police raid. Many devotees, selling, when we started selling record albums, and we used this line, we're just coming back from a peace festival in India, and one part is that we are feeding the hungry children with this money, but mainly two events. There was one devotee, he even got initiated and then he left, pressured by his father. His initiation was Uktal from Berlin. What we didn't know, his father was working for the Federal Criminal Department, Bundeskriminalamt, the Berlin, West Berlin it was at that time. He was I'm very careful calling somebody a demon. So many people we think they're demons, they're actually not yet devotees, or didn't come out yet. They're just following some, opinion. But he was a real demon, and he really set out to put all the gears in motion, all the wheels in motion, to get rid of the Hare Krishnas in Germany. And there were different times, like I mentioned before. We faced a lot of opposition. I'm digressing again, like if you go in Hamburg when we did book distribution, and one part is called Bergedorf, one part of the city. And these people, they come to you and said, if you don't leave Bergedorf, I'm going to call the police and something. They talk like they own the city, or they own that district, and we are some foreign thing and they have to get rid of. I think this has changed a little bit. More tolerance, more reception. But these things were going on in Germany, and the other one was, you heard about the article in the other big magazine, Stern, Illustrated Stern magazine. They, actually in Cologne, I was there, we were a very small temple still. It was just my former wife, myself, we didn't have any children yet. There was a young Bhakta from Sri Lanka, Mahakarta later. Maybe, no, it was Akrura was there. It was very small still. And there was one teacher in the neighborhood. He was very friendly, receptive. And he brought a friend or guest that this person is interested in Krishna consciousness. So I trusted the whole situation. I didn't think twice about it. And he said he wants to join. I said, come on, we shaved him up first night, and he was willing. We preached him, and we took him on traveling Sankirtan also, book distribution. And he also came to, when Srila Prabhupada came to Schloss Rettershof, was there in the fire exit, and out of a sudden he was gone. And he had brought a film team also. I mean, we were very liberal, whoever wants to film. The film team was actually sent by the Catholic Church or Protestant Church to make a documentary about youth sects and how horrible it is, how they live. And I mentioned that before, that it backfired on them because it's a very good documentary. I mean, you can make devotees actually. So so they. Anyone has seen this? Mm-hmm. It's on the internet now to find it, and so. But we can get back to that later. So they were there, and in fact, my mother, she was on that footage around the fire sacrifice. My father was somewhere back in the room, and later on, much later, my mother became very Christian orientated. I mean, she was from childhood. She had a function in the church, the local church in Hamburg, and said, "Frau Stocker, we saw you in that youth sect in the movie, you know something." Yeah, that my son was there. She was very relaxed about it. So that movie was shot during that, but they also went to Munich. You saw those pictures, Durgama and Kanchani and Bhakti Maharaj sitting there, like almost like a murti or something, plain background, and those Sankirtan pictures are very beautiful. So anyhow, and that person who I shaved up, that new Bhakta who joined the Cologne, he was actually a reporter, a journalist for that big Stern magazine, The Star. It's a very big illustrated magazine, not anymore so, but at that time they had a circulation of 6 million. So before we knew, after the festival, they came out weekly. Next week there was, I think it was Jayagora on the front cover, getting money from some passenger, and it's called. The article, it was a main article, a main story. It was called Flucht in transzendentaler Unterhose. That was the title. Means escape in transcendental underwear. He was very shocked about our Kopen. but he was wearing that. But he couldn't get, that was on his mind. And he said, "What is it?" And Kura said, "Transcendental underwear." So he wasn't ready for anything else. So he pointed that article, and that article wrote, "These people, they are collecting money on false statements for the children in India, and they got a perfect job. Everyone is making 500 Deutschmarks a day and like that." And which wasn't true. I mean, only our top distributors, Manidhara and Santimati, Bibhisana, I was not a bad, but counting in money, I was more like 220, 250, 320 on a very good day, if you count in, But it was Bibhisana, Alanad, of course, who later became Bhakti Paramatmeti Swami. He was really the top, but there was Manidhara, of course, and Santimati is not so well known, the wife of Jayagora. She was very good, and Bibhisan actually was the best. because he did the same in only 2-3 hours. Because when we arrived, I mean, I shouldn't say it, but it's all some kind of Leela. He said, you go out. He was a Sankirtan leader. I have to take a little more rest. So he only started like 2 hours later. And later he confessed to me that sometimes in between he went to the cinema and watched a movie. And then he still distributed more books than anyone else. So I think he is actually the top man. So that's beside the point. So all this came, that's why the police raid came later in 74. Mainly because of this expose, I don't know what they called it. There's this word for this in journalism, exposing journalism, something like that. And anyway, that I think you talk to many devotees, and that's not the subject today. The subject is Prabhupada at the Schloss Rettershof. And all in all, so I hardly went on any morning walks because that was a time when I had to arrange the Sankirtan groups and room darshans and lectures, of course. But, yeah.
I have a question about the book, because you said you were working in the BBT and there was this very beautiful Bhagavad Gita printed at that time.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was.
Maybe you could say a little bit about this, because Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj always talks about this book, and I also have one copy, and it's
the original.
The original.
1974. Gita came also out. Yeah, it was around that time because I received my advance copies when I was in Cologne, and I was in the Cologne temple didn't last very long because we got the Schloss, and then everything was closed for the time being. But if you remind me in the end, I mean, this Bhagavad Gita had a huge impact, and I just want to finish off this. So, what was that? So other than that, one other beautiful memory I have is, I was a Grihastha at that time already, and I had this bought from relatives, almost new, very inexpensive for me because some cousin brother, he sold it to me. Simca 1000 LS. Very small car, compact, was used for rally, had the engine in the background, like a Volkswagen buggy. Anyways, it was a small car, it was my car. But I mean, in those days, we didn't have any private things like that. So, but on one morning walk into the fields, Srila Prabhupada felt tired, weak. He said, can I go back, buy some car? So this small car was perfect to go through the small lane through the fields. So I think Shivananda, I gave him the key, he brought the car, and I was in bliss. Prabhupada sitting in my car. So, and I kept, that passenger seat always became like sacred for me. But nothing lasted long in those days. Just 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, Prithu Prabhu again, and Chakravarti, Atma, give us the keys. We need something important in Frankfurt. I said, okay. And we don't want to take the big van. And here are the keys. They came back after a few hours, no more car. They said, your car is already on the junkyard. Here are the keys. So, what's the need of these keys, But it was all in the mood, don't be attached, Prabhu. And in fact, you should be very happy that we are, nothing happened to us. So don't be attached. That was, and frankly, I didn't think much about it, because we were a real community at that time. And it was like, it was not a big issue. There was no, nothing happened to you. No, it was here, Krishna protects his devotees, what do you expect? So nobody really thought anything much about it, and Sankirtan went on, like that. So that was Germany. I mean, if briefly about the Bhagavad Gita, it was, I do remember, the first book, of course, I received in German was Sri Ishopanishad. And then when Hansaruddha came, he reprinted that as it is, without any changes, no new translation, and he reprinted big volumes. And then I know we had Easy Journey to Other Planets, Sri Upanishad, of course, Perfection of Yoga, and 3 interviews, which was a German affair. Life Comes from Life. We had many small books. What I don't remember, I remember that the Krishna books and the first volume, Srimad Bhagavatam, were printed shortly after Srila Prabhupada's visit. I remember that. I can't remember Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I think that was the first big book, but I'm not, I can find out. I have 2 copies, and if I look at the pictures, there are devotees in the background in a certain location. And if this is Schloss Rettershof, like the Krishna book, I know it was printed after. It seems to me now that Bhagavad Gita, big 1,600 pages, because the German language is longer, that was a huge, huge success. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased. And that came shortly before the visit to Schloss Rettershof. And, well, it had a huge impact on people took us more seriously. I remember I received my copies in Cologne and then said, well, you try to distribute these books on the street. So before we had Ishopanishad, Easy Journey. So, but now we had a book which has like a resale value officially of 40 Deutschmarks. So I thought, how are we going to, I thought I'd try anyway. But just to mention how much impact this book had, I went to one of the biggest bookshops near the Cologne Cathedral, and I didn't expect any. And the boss came right away, the owner. Oh, Bhagavad Gita in Deutsch, in German. Yeah, give me 5 copies. I said, wow, that's easy. Easy Sankirtan today. Big books, the first try, 5 in a go. And so he was very pleased, educated man to get the Bhagavad Gita. There are some, but when he opened it, he was blown away. Devanagari, Sanskrit transliteration. He took it very seriously. And he was very happy to get it. And price was, the bookstores, they look like at the retail price, and they take 40% off, because that's their cut. It's in Germany, it's whether you buy a book at the airport, or downtown in the bookshop, or at the petrol station, books have a fixed price, usually, most books. And 40% is always the markup for the bookseller. So it was clear, he just gave me the cash. So I was walking on clouds. Jayagura was there. So I found it up, Jayagura and Aya. We used to call him Aya, his name is Aja. And then the next one was quite easy too. Then it became difficult for 2 hours, 3 hours. The next one was, no, I don't need this. And I didn't give up easily on something. I asked the question, so he was walking away. I said, wait a minute, sir. What is your profession? He said, I'm a private investigator, detective. I said, come on. How can you probably do your work without having the book of knowledge, where you find everything you have to know about the nature of people, everything? What do you mean? We came back and he took a book, Bhagavad Gita, like that. But after that, I think 2-3 hours, nothing. I went into 2 more bookstores, they weren't interested. But it came. We should never underestimate the books, even in the value point of non-devotees. Usually people think, well, this is serious, this is very serious. Like when the Srimad Bhagavatam came out, I picked up the phone in Schloss Rettershof. Well, this is the Max Planck Institute in Munich. is the scientific, institute in Germany. It's like the, what is it, MIT in America, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So they asked, I said, yeah, how can I help you, Hare Krishna? We were still, Chakravarti, when he wrote to the printers, he would write, lieber Herr so-und-so, bitte akzeptieren Sie meine demütigen Ehrerbietung. So we were just, please accept my humble obeisance, dealing with the outside world, and your humble servant, so. No, we said, Hare Krishna, how can I help you? Yes, we heard that you brought out this book, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Purana. We have heard about it before. You have it in German language. And there are references to prehistoric nuclear weapons. So please send us, how much does it cost? Where shall we? So they were interested particularly in that point. So they got the whole story of Ashwatthama and, Drupadi. So if they didn't read anything else, they already got very essential points. So, there was another instruction of Srila Prabhupada there was one very important instruction. When we took him for a tour of the premises and the basement, so he was very pleased to see that we had plenty of books to distribute. And then he saw these pallets full of record albums. And mind you, they were bona fide kirtan, bhajan, they were not any, just regular kirtan. And, but Srila Prabhupada wasn't pleased. He said, this can be like a side issue, but I don't want you to make this the main thing, to make money and on books. And some devotee humbly said, but Srila Prabhupada, this is also devotional music and we have very good feedback. Prabhupada said, no, it's sentimental. So Prabhupada could be very hard sometimes. Compared to the books, this is sentimental. He wanted so from that time onwards we concentrated again on books. It was a tough time, so. That was, well, that's so much. Anyway, I didn't have that much association, but when I start speaking about it, there are so many things that I remember out of a sudden, which are actually related, like the last instruction is a very important instruction. Distribute the books, not the records. Or don't make records the main thing, So then, I don't know, is there any more time? I can go to the next stop, either France, well, just go chronological. Well, I think I tell that if there's enough time. It's not very long. 10 minutes maybe. Not very long. And devotees were asking about the bus. You were asking about the bus party. So I tried to make it short because I went overland 4 times. 2 times Hansadutta buses. I was actually in charge for those. 3rd time was with Prabhu Vishnu Swami and his crew. He wanted me to come along. He had 4, these box vans, the Mercedes 806 diesel. You see them, devotees in Prague, they still have one. The boxy shape, smaller than a truck, but bigger than a van. So you get the idea, Mercedes. But I couldn't complete that because that journey I had to return with Gorky Shore because we had promised Hansadutta to be in Berkeley at such and such date, and Hansadutta was already getting quite angry that we went out on this trip with Prabhu Vishnu. We are his man, after all, not Jai Fataka's man. That was the thing at that time. And so we said, well, we were already delayed from Hansadutta's point of view. I sent my family in advance. He didn't like it. That I sent them without me coming. And then we got stuck at the border, Turkey to Iran. Because it was revolution, full blast going on. And we arrived at the day then the Shah flew out to Egypt. And Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini, flew in. So the officers at the border station, they were bewildered themselves. They didn't know what picture to put, the Shah or Khomeini, and they just closed the whole thing for 1 week. And you saw burning cities in the background. So I asked Prabhu Vishnu Maharaj Swami at that time, is it okay? I mean, Hansaruda is getting mad. It's Gorkishore and myself, we go back overland and fly out of London. He said, no, it's perfectly okay. We don't even know how long this will take and whether we have to return and try to go by boat from Dubai. So it was all open. But after 2 weeks, they were able to go, he told me later. And it wasn't a big problem anyhow. And the last trip was just 2 of us, Bhashyakara, some of you may know him, and myself with a beaten up, again, smaller than a truck, 406 diesel Mercedes. But that was already run by the postal service, and after that by a hippie musician group. It was already old and beaten up. And I had no mechanic for that trip. I was on my own with Bhashyakara, just the 2 of us. And there was war in Iran and Iraq. They had a war at that time. And the Russians were in Afghanistan. So we didn't want to go that route. Although they said, you can go in convoy. Convoy, that's the word. Yeah, you can go in convoy. But I was thinking maybe they take us as Russians and blow up our car, kill us. So we went that tour through southern Balochistan, southern Iran. And the war wasn't, we didn't notice any war, because that was at the oil fields. The Iran-Iraq war at that time was just the oil fields and surroundings. We only saw sometimes big aircraft, Iran Air, parked in the middle of nowhere, really, in the desert, because they wanted to protect them from bombing, so they put them far in the... Anyway, that was the 4th trip. So I'm speaking, the first trip, it was exciting of course, but time is short. The first trip was 45 devotees, 3 buses and 4 vans. Then when we arrived, it was shortly before Gur Purnima, and then there was this...
So you went from Frankfurt to Calcutta? Or?
From Frankfurt first to Vrindavan. And on the first trip from Vrindavan, we went overland for the Mayapur festival to Calcutta, and no, we went straight to Mayapur. We had very good maps. There was no Google Maps at that time. We had military maps, so very accurate maps with a small... I don't know how we got them, but devotees. So, but when we arrived in Mayapur, I stayed for the festival. And then Hansaduda, he was starting the so-called Nitai Gaur World Traveling Sankirtan Party, along with Lokanath Maharaj at that time. And many just went almost straight back to Germany. They got so sick in India and they didn't want to stay. So that group started, but Hansaduda wanted me, so that's now the story. Hansaduda wanted me to go back to Germany more or less immediately, buy more buses, and take more vans away from Germany, and equipment, because he realized he's not going to be the GVC anymore. It was, Prabhu was made GVC at that time, so he wanted most of his men and all the equipment. So you go back, and get it together, gave me some money, said I will send you some more money, no problem with that. So I flew back. I got to know all these little things among the GVC. It was funny, really. The good thing about the GVC at that time, you always knew what's going on, because they were in competition. And they would reveal things to get you to their side. That was very funny. Like, as how do I get the ticket, Hansaduda Prabhu? Oh, you just go to Gopal Krishna. He's in Delhi right now. You will reach there by train. and said he can just charge him, Hansaduta, after. I said, and then I go by Krishna Prabhu, Hansaduta. Yeah, you go to Syrian Arab Airlines in Delhi. You get a cheap ticket, and so I went there. And yeah, sorry, sir. I have other tickets too. I'm a general agent. We have Syrian Arab advertisement. That's our main. But there won't be any flight on Syrian Arab Airlines until 3 days, 4 days later. Some other I didn't want to wait and said, but I can put you on Lufthansa tonight in a few hours. Cost more, almost double. I said, no problem. so they put me on Lufthansa. Later I heard, among the GVC, Gopal Krishna came to me in Bombay. Atmavidya, I had to pay double for your ticket. Then adjusted like that. And I said, never mind, Gopal Prabhu. And it was funny how they were dealing among each other. Like Hansaduta, he said, oh, no problem, Gopal will pay. And I think he only paid him Syrian Arab. It was funny for me to see these things, how they dealt among them, like big boys, It was. So I flew back, I called Schloss Reitershof, Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj, Suchandra, picked up. And it so happened that Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj now, he used to be Suchandra, and at that time Vedavyas, now Bhakti Gauravani Swami, they were very much in favor of the new management, Jayatirtha. And Jayatirtha, whatever he was a very wonderful gentleman person. And his wife, Manju Ali, some of you may know Manju Ali, his former wife in London, very approachable. She remembered me after. I met her once or twice in Germany, in London, and I see her like 40 years later, and Atmavidya. I said, how do you remember me? We had such a nice talk. I didn't remember anything, but Manju Ali, she could remember. So that was his wife. And I must say, Jayatirtha was very kind to me also. Suchandra on the phone, I called from the airport, Atmavidya. Yes? Was willst du hier? so he was pretty direct. What do you want here? Yeah. So I told him the story, get more buses, and so anyway, I think he personally picked me up then. Maybe Akshara, I don't know. So I came there. I wasn't all that welcome, but Jayatirtha was very friendly. But the mood was, Hansaduta and his men had already taken so many devotees, equipment. That's not right. And the German, after all these legal things, is struggling. Sankirtan was going again, but they are struggling. So don't ruin the German yatra just because Hansaduta now has Nitai Go world traveling, and you are following him and not staying in Germany. So the mood was such. Anyhow, I got things together, devotees came, ready to go. And we were almost ready to go. Then a call came from, I don't know, the story must be twice on the internet already, from the Czech Republic and I think from Golokadam. Anyway, there's no problem repeating things. So a call came from Harikesh Maharaj, who was in France, Nouvelle Mayapur on the farm. And he was sitting there with Jayatirtha and Bhagavan. They were all there. Bhagavan, of course, that was because Srila Prabhupada was there. And they said, Atmavidya, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you and the whole bus party you're taking. You come immediately in the vans, you leave the buses at the Schloss, 2 big old buses. So I said, okay. So we went more or less right away with our vans. And when we arrived, I tried to make it a little shorter. There are some details. When we arrived, I, maybe along with Ikshaku, I can't remember, maybe alone, Ikshaku, another character. I was called in the room, and there they were sitting, Bhagavan, Jayatirtha, and Harikesh. Swami. At that time, I already said yesterday, he wasn't a GBC or something, but he was like the main Eastern Europe preaching, leader for the Eastern Europe program. So then, Harikesh first thing, Atmavidya, why are you smiling? You're always smiling. This is such a serious thing. So I just kept smiling because I had this thing with Harikesh Maharaj. I never took him fully seriously. And he respected me for that. I think I liked him actually. I still like him in many ways. But he wasn't my type in the sense of cooperation or something like that. So then, okay. And then he said, so, huh? No, he was somewhere in the room. So Harikesh, he took the lead, he took the word. And said, so you immediately give all the keys and the car papers to Jayatita, who is the GBC for Germany, and you and the whole party, you travel back by train and buses and to Germany. And you're not taking the vans to India. You can take your 2 old second-hand or third, fourth-hand buses you bought, and you don't take the German devotees with you. The others, if their GBC agrees, can go, the British. And so I said, wait a minute. You said Srila Prabhupada wants to see us. So I want to hear this from Srila Prabhupada, that no, this was just, we had to say something and, to get you here. So I didn't say anything. I said, well, that was a trick. I thought, nice, because now I can play tricks too, tit for tat. So I was thinking maybe how to get out of this situation. And then Bhagavan, he had a very slight smile in the corners of his mouth. So he was somewhat sympathetic to us. He wasn't also not involved really. And so Harikesh said, Jaya Prabhu, please take the keys and papers now from Atma. Do it now, I said, well, I fully agree. Let me take all the devotees back in the vans, and then I will hand the keys and papers to Vedavyas, who seemed to be in charge in your absence and everything. But it's not practical to put these devotees through the, now buying bus tickets and this and that. More practical with the luggage and this and that. Judges, I trust Atmavidya. So good. So I trust. So Jayat and Harikesh said, how can you? And so he gave up. Jayacharya said he trusts me, so I had the keys and I had the papers. So we had our slide plan. It was a new situation for us. But I said, well, before we were ready to go, but then there was a darshan, Srila Prabhupada in the garden. So we went there. And it was a big darshan based on Bhagavad Gita slokas, and then a lot of question and answers. Prabhupada at that time, at that darshan, he liked to exchange and hear questions and hear realizations maybe also from devotees. It was a very informal setting. It was Pritupur, some sannyasi standing there. So at one point again, Srila Prabhupada asked, anyone any question? And well, I guess you don't know Sarva Sagra. He was my buddy, Turkish background. He was from the Turkish part of Cyprus, but grown up in London. He was street smart, he knew his way around. And so he lifted his hand, Srila Prabhupada said, yes. He said, Srila Prabhupada, I have a question, yes. If there is a temple, and there's only one bicycle, and 2 devotees want to go on Sankirtan, And the sannyasis, they were already rolling their eyes, and one of these crazy Hansaduta men, bothering Srila Prabhupada with stupid questions. You could see in their expressions. But Prabhupada took it very seriously and was smiling. So what do they do if there's only one bicycle and two of them want to use it for Sankirtan? So Prabhupada was smiling deeply, actually, and he said they should follow their respective GBC. So I understand, in general in Asia, many Asian countries, indirect dealings, words are actually appreciated. So Prabhupada, his coming to this world is all Leela, but part of the Leela is appearing in a Bengali surrounding, and they have their Leelas, and I think Prabhupada totally understood what's going on, 100%. And he made this comment. So Hansaduta was our GVC, and he wanted us to come over. So that's, later I heard from Harisori Prabhu. I asked him, I think maybe it's even one of his books. I said, how did Srila Prabhupada react? He said, I wasn't well-known devotee, but the name Atmavidya was sometimes mentioned in some contexts to Srila Prabhupada directly. Of course, later I had direct contact in Hyderabad, but that's a different story. But at that time, this Atmavidya, he did the right thing. So I felt he did the right thing. And then he said, devotees are not stupid. So he actually liked, and he chuckled about it. And the historical context you have to understand is also that at that time, the money and opulence was in Europe and in the US. In India, the temples were struggling for money and support and everything. So Srila Prabhupada was very much in favor of anything being developed in India. What to speak of book distribution, Harinam, he wanted that very much, so he was very much in favor. And there was Gargamuni almost at the same time, 6 vans. Pusta Krishna and Rida, they drove this red Mercedes for Prabhupada overland. And, what's his name? Tribhuvanat. He all by himself. Not by himself, he had that smile that could make devotees actually. Do you know Tribhuvanat? His smile, I think he could just turn people into devotees. That's just totally innocent and, and always enthusiastic and always mission impossible, So Ravi asked Tribhuvanat once, I understand your program and you're all by yourself. So how are you going to do this all practically? And Tribhuvanat said, well, at least it helps me to fix my mind. So, and then he did it, somehow or other he did it. He bought a van, he took it to the Middle East. So how did I get to... So Prabhupada later said, so many devotees went overland at that time. Anyhow, to finish the story, you probably want to know the outcome. We drove back, and when we came back, I tried to make it short, we saw our buses parked there, and those number plates, they had these oval export number plates. They're oval still, I think, in Germany. They're ready for export. You got all the papers ready. They were gone. Somebody had taken them. So that was frustrating, because what to do now? So Dwaraka Nayaka, one of our main drivers, he didn't give up that easily. We had this huge rubbish container, 6 cubic meter, full of things. So he looked in there. It was already getting dark, so we got a torchlight, and he saw one of these number plates crumbled up, cut into pieces, half, and almost completely destroyed. So he dived right into the garbage head first, and he recovered all 4 plates, 2 buses, 2 for the front, 2 for the back, and they were completely rendered, for all practical purpose, unusable. So we were shocked. So what to do? At the same time, we were afraid that devotees by force will take our keys. So we just took everyone. We were fortunately packed. We were quite ready to go, and we just moved to some remote big parking lot near some big park, forest, hoping that no police car will show up and said, hey, what's going on here without license plate, big buses, plus we didn't have bus driver's license. On the first trip we had Udvaga, one, but we didn't have any bus driver license, so that was always a little bit of shaky until you reach Istanbul, or then, you know, you give him some bakshish or something. It doesn't really matter whether you have a driver's license for a bus, but in Germany there are even then they had strict regulation. But now we didn't have driver license and we didn't have the number plates either. The vans were all okay, they were parking there. But I remembered, along with Dwarakanayaka, we had made friends with the junkyard gypsies. They were running a junkyard, and long story short, that one big gypsy, he used to drive the area where the Schloss is to collect junk. So he came one day to Schloss, do we have anything old metal? We had something actually we want to get rid of. He said, oh, thank you. But he said, I heard that you have very beautiful statues on the altar or something. I want to see those. So, but he was, you know, smelling of motor oil, greasy overall, black in the face from oil and everything. So devotees came, no, not possible. You come on Sunday, your holiday, nice, little nicer dressed, and so I think it was. But Dwarakanayaka, Iksha, myself, we were thinking, well, here's a spirit soul, he wants to see Krishna now and Radharani. So he said, no, come in. Other devotees were present. So we placed a little distance, so he had darshan, he was very impressed, and naturally he was a gypsy. I mean, he immediately became friends with Dwarakanayaka, Ikshaku and myself. Because these guys, they spoke up for me, I wanted, you know. So we went to there, we took one of the vans, Dwarakanayaka and myself, with the 4 crumbled up, and showed it to him. I forgot his name. He had a German short name, like Heinz or something like that. But he was a gypsy through and through. He smiled, he said, oh, we do that almost every day, that's our second nature, fixing number plates up, you know. So they did a good job, we put it on, and we drove overland. Which was, of course, very exciting. But that's how it happened. And I already said, I heard later from Hari Sori Prabhu that Prabhupada actually chuckled about the whole thing and was very much in favor of developing India. I think we have to close it now, otherwise it will get too long, because next story will be Vrindavan. But I don't think it's the last time I come here. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So after breakfast we will go to the Goshala? No, Napa?
Yes. Service, but in the evening it would be actually better.
And am Abend wäre es besser?
Ja, tagsüber essen wir und das sind sie halt einfach auf dem Feld und
oh ja, okay.
wollen, glaube ich, auch nicht so gestört werden. Aber abends sind sie immer in so einer nicen Stimmung auch und da bürsten wir sie immer.
Oh, wunderbar. Dann kann ich.
Da hast du falsch spielt manchmal mit ihnen. Und,
ja, das mehr um welche Zeit ungefähr?
Das ist so um 8 immer. Also
oh, wunderbar, passt mir genau.
7:30 so.
Dann kann ich heute tagsüber mit Balaram Pran am Rechner da mit Arad.
Ja, genau.